How do you know that the healthy food you are feeding your kids is actually healthy and not just marketing? The truth is that you wouldn't unless you really understood where your food came from and what organic or grass-fed really means. And honestly, until we became farmers, we were just like you. We shopped at Whole Foods, we went to farmers markets, scouring labels for weird ingredients, choosing the product with the best story on the label that sounded the most authentic, ultimately putting all of our trust into some faceless company we didn't know from Adam and on words like organic that we didn't fully understand. But when we took the idea of farm to table like really to heart and made the decision to become food producers instead of just consumers, we figured out the truth. We were wrong, and clean labels mean nothing. In this video, we'll tell you the secrets that labels don't tell, how to evaluate the authenticity of supposedly clean food, and how to not get misled into buying repackaged grocery store junk at your local farmer's market. Take a look around. People look awful. They look sick. Compare photos of a beach from 1955 to today in 2025 and tell me the first thing you notice. And it's not just weight. It's cancer and microplastics, things you can't see, behavioral, mental issues across all the population segments, autoimmune disorders, cancer, heart disease, all kinds of nasty stuff, dementia, everything. All of this in spite of the fact that healthy food is more accessible than ever. I mean, for crying out loud, you can go to a truck stop and buy designer Greek yogurt. What is going on? It's as simple as this. You are what you eat, and what you eat is more than an ingredient list. Modern industrial farming relies heavily on chemical inputs for success. Have a weed? Here's a pesticide. Have a parasite? Here's a spray. These aren't ingredients though, these are practices, and practices are not on labels. And the residues and contamination from these practices are killing our kids, our society, and our topsoil. This is not a problem at some faraway land. This is not like some weird conspiracy around a conference table in some giant corporation. I mean, it's here. We experienced this firsthand in rural Ohio when we went to a local farming seminar a few weeks ago. One of the speakers, a saleswoman for a supposedly safe herbicide for use on hayfields, was answering a question about whether or not manure from animals grazing on a treated pasture could be used to fertilize crops. The speaker's answer? Yeah, absolutely, sure. Well, unless it's a soybean field, then the manure will kill your beans. Wait, what? That means, logically, that there's herbicide residue in the manure. And if there's residue in the manure, is it still in the animal? We were wondering this, my wife and I, during the seminar. And yes, she goes on to say that when you butcher an animal that had been eating grass from a treated pasture, you have to wait between when the animal ate off that pasture and when you butcher it, because you better believe there's still residue in the animal. But are you ready for the outrage? Because here it is, the residue's not listed on the label. You could be buying beef marketed as grass-fed, and indeed, maybe it is, but grass-fed how? For example, USDA organic does not mean regenerative, which is what our farm is and what most Americans think of when they think of organic. A producer can be USDA organic and still raise their animals in a CAFO, a confined animal feeding operation. They aren't lying, but it's like calling a prison a government-funded extended stay hotel. Semantics. Labels do not tell the full story, and that full story is literally the story of how a farm puts food on your table. But before I do, that was some heavy stuff. There is hope, and I'm going to get there, but just a quick reminder that this video is brought to you by, but not sponsored by, our family farm. We're going to talk about some heavy stuff in this video, and this is just a friendly reminder that we do not use anything on this farm that would hurt you, because this farm is how I feed my kids. Check us out and get 50% off your first order at tryourfarm.com. Okay, I love my kids. And they're at the age where they're growing so fast, can't keep shoes, pants, anything on them. It's crazy. If there ever was an example of you being what you eat, it's them. And I don't want them being built out of Cheetos, Oreos, and glyphosate. I want them built out of stuff that won't give them some weird cancer at 25. I mean, abstractly, you are what you eat makes sense, but I didn't actually understand how true it was until we started raising our own animals. So I'm back out here with our friends the chickens. And they are a great illustration of the old saying, you are what you eat. I mean, truly, they are what you eat. So This heckin' chonker here, geez, 7 short weeks ago, was just a tiny little fuzzy chick. You've seen videos on the channel when we bring them in. They grow out really, really fast. So in 9 weeks, these Cornish cross broilers go from tiny little chick, about yay big, to something that looks like this and bigger when we actually take them into, well, you know, I don't want to say it with him here, but you know what I mean. Anyway, one of the things that we notice, because these guys, they eat so much, and of course, you know, what's the other side of eating? You know where the food goes in, food has to go out. Their manure smells like the food they eat. Kind of makes sense, right? It seems elementary, but truly, you are what you eat. These guys, we feed them a high quality food that's non-GMO, it's organic, it has no soy in it, so it's a pea protein and algae and some other things that make up a good healthy protein profile for a growing bird like yourself. I've smelled manure from animals that are fed more conventional feed, and it doesn't smell like manure. Does that make sense? Or it smells worse, I suppose. Maybe this is just something that happens to farmers because we wind up dealing with, you know, the inputs and outputs of animals all day long, but it's something that you notice, and I didn't know that until we started growing our own food, until we became food producers. An important note to make, the manure is not waste. Though it may be waste to the bird, and it's waste to us, it's something that we can't eat, obviously, but the manure plays an important part in the whole ecosystem of farming. The entire point of putting them in the movable enclosures is to give them fresh forage every day, of course, but also help them spread that manure, which is full of fertilizer, full of minerals, moisture, which we definitely need right now because we're in the middle of a bad drought, full of all kinds of good stuff that feeds our grass and our topsoil and the microbes in the topsoil, so that our grazing animals can come back and eat in a lush pasture the next year. And since we're rebuilding pasture on this farm that has not been regeneratively grazed ever, or at least not for 100 years, then we need all the help we can get, and we got to have good manure. If our manure is not good, and if we're killing our soil biology because of additives in the manure, or because of just junk in there, chemical junk that we don't need, we're not doing ourselves any service, and we're not growing what we need to grow other animals and heal the land, heal the soil, and then heal ourselves. Going back to you are what you eat, this all scales to a society level as well. If animals are what they eat, like when we feed our chickens the feed ration that they get, if we eat the animals and we eat the crops that are ingesting all that stuff, what does that say about us? It's not good, let me tell you. So there was a scare a few years back about PFAS chemicals that basically destroyed family farms, or a few family farms I think it was, up in Maine. Excuse me if I'm wrong, but it was in the New England area, pretty sure it was Maine. And what is PFAS? PFAS are persistent chemicals that never go away. They are essentially not actually radioactive, but it's as if they were radioactive chemicals that have some ridiculous half-life that outlives the standard lifespan of not just a human, but a few generations of humans. Basically, you can't kill this stuff. You can't mitigate it. You can't get rid of it. Where does it come from? Well, it is common practice in certain parts of the country to use human manure compost. Sounds gross, but what they do is they take if you live in a city and you have a sewer treatment plant, the sewer treatment plant, after that sewage gets treated, it turns into a solid that is relatively benign from a biological standpoint. So all like the nasty stuff that lives in our guts, that stuff gets broken down by the composting process. And then you can take that stuff and pretty safely actually spread it on your fields, and it becomes compost and nutrients for the fields. Now, here's the problem though. You are what you eat. Humans are so full of garbage that these PFAS chemicals, this compost that was supposed to be safe, was so full of that because we are full of that when they spread this stuff on these fields up in Maine or wherever it was, they essentially nuked their fields. And I'm not using that metaphor lightly. What happened to that land is as if you had set off a nuclear weapon. If you take a piece of ground and you nuke it, humans can't set foot on that. That land is toxic to them for generations due to radioactivity primarily. It's the same problem with these PFAS chemicals. It's not radioactive in that sense, but that stuff gets into food, it gets on food, and it is toxic, deeply toxic, carcinogenic to humans. And once it's in the topsoil, you can't get rid of it. You have to get rid of the topsoil. Imagine a farm of hundreds of acres, if not thousands of acres, and you've got 24 inches of topsoil that now you have to cart off, and it's so toxic that you have to store it like you would nuclear waste. It destroyed these families' farms and destroyed the land for generations. It's like a Superfund site for think of a manure spreader, how far it flings manure all over the place, and imagine that for acres and acres and acres and acres and acres. It's a tragedy. And that stuff's inside of us. That's disgusting. It's a lot of work to farm like this, and that's why I want to say, don't blame the farmers, especially the ones that are doing it conventionally. They are not the enemy. In fact, a lot of them are my neighbors and my family. And I don't ever, and specifically to all of you, I am not saying that you guys are destroying the planet or part of the problem or whatever else. To everybody who's watching, this is not our full-time job. This is a startup farm that'll take years to get up and going. That's part of why we do this content creation. We have the luxury of trying things out because we don't rely on the farm for our full-time income. We can make mistakes, whereas in a farm where it is the sole source of income, if you make a mistake that impacts your harvest for a season, that may be the difference between you keeping the farm and losing it. So farmers, farming is a hard business. There is a tension between commodity prices, which sets the price of literally everything from beef to soybeans to corn and all that, to input costs, which have gone out of control. Inflation has hit farmers super hard, just like it's hit everybody else. And labor shortages, because there's just less people overall, they're struggling too. And typically these are very large acreages with rather small groups of people that are actively working them. Farmers are the best business people on planet Earth. That said, it's not easy and it's getting harder. And if there was a way that didn't involve spending tens of thousands of dollars on sprays and all that stuff, but also didn't make them work 10 times as hard with time they don't already have, they jump on it in a heartbeat. And there's some really promising stuff going on in the regen egg space with things like cover crops and roller crimpers and all kinds of new equipment and new old processes that make it scalable to do regenerative egg. But the farmers are suffering with this too. Incidents of cancer, non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, specifically because of glyphosate, are higher in farmers than in non-farmers, and that is not great. So the farmers are not the enemy. You need to go out and support your local farm. You can support us. tryourfarm.com, 50% off your first order if you go to that website and try it out. But go to your local farmers market. Make a friend with a farmer that's nearby. For crying out loud, buy your beef and chicken from anybody. It doesn't have to be from us. There's hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands of small farmers that are barely making ends meet that would love to have you as a customer. So, the more you support them, the better this whole ecosystem becomes and the less of an issue the problem becomes. We talked about some pretty heavy stuff, and I am one of those people where I don't like to just give all this bad and then give no way to fix it. There is a lot that you can do as an individual consumer. Like I mentioned before, you can buy from a local farmer. It's hugely important to buy from a local farm. Anything, and there's enough of us to go around. If 2% of the American population decided to do business with a local farm at a farm stand or a farmer's market, or just going up to a farm and directly doing business with somebody selling beef, it would be a radically different country for the better, and it would make farming way more profitable than it is today. It is so strange that farming for millennia was the primary industry of a culture because that's how people got their food. And somehow now we think we're so special that we can get away with not farming, and somehow that's not going to negatively impact our societies. It's crazy. So buy from a local farmer. Secondly, you can absolutely grow some of your own food. Even if you live in an apartment in the city, you can grow a container garden, you can grow some herbs. Nothing tastes as good as fresh herbs out of soil. And that soil doesn't matter if it's in a pot, if it's on your apartment patio, or if it comes out of a huge garden that you have on a farm. I'll post some links here. Earth 911 and Earth Hero, those are links for label research. We've talked a lot about labels on food and how they can not tell the whole truth or the whole picture. They help out with label options, research, what is actually organic and follows best practices. Basically looking for brands and businesses that actually do what you think they do, and they don't just market something that they're definitely not. We're putting out a free guide that you can sign up for at farmmarketguide.com. And if you go there, you'll get some emails from us that explain everything that we've learned as food producers of how we can basically look at something at a farmer's market. And because we make it and we make our own food, we can tell you whether or not it's BS. Instead of having to go out and become farmers like us, we're just going to share the information with you because it makes a lot of sense and you're our viewers and we love you and everything else. So farmmarketguide.com. It's just a weekly series of email tips that tell you how to evaluate your farmer's market or the vendors at your farmer's market to make sure that you're not getting a raw deal.